Hi, so we're still in chapter 1 of A Modern Guide to Public Relations. I don't know why I had to look. You think I'd remember it, the name. Okay, that's my book. So we are going to talk about what kind of PR person are you going to be? So what we're going to talk about are the different types of PR roles. But what I really meant, and I just don't know if I really said what I meant in here because, I only have so much time. What I meant was like, what kind of PR person are you going to be? Are you going to be a good one or what? And hopefully this whole book is about being a good PR person. And maybe I'll get into what I mean by that because there's actually 3 ways to be a good PR person. I mean, I'm sure there's lots more ways, but I meant of 3 ways. But first we're going to talk about the different types of PR. First of all, you can start in PR, and if you get good PR training and you take it seriously, you can take your PR career with you anywhere, meaning you might not stay in PR, which is fine. A lot of people don't, maybe because it's kind of annoying. If you read this book, you'll understand why it's a little annoying. I was really annoyed as I was editing my own book. It's a lot to PR. But anyway, okay, so different types of PR. Anyway, if you do have good training and you're really great, as I'm sure you are, you can do a lot of different things like lead a company, start a company, HR, different things. Okay, so publicist. This is what I have. Publicist, fancy stereotypes, meaning this is the stereotypical PR person that they're just like, and publicist means they're just trying to get buzz, but it's what you see in the movies where it's like, oh, I have a star and I'm going to get her on the red carpet. Or I have somebody who just got in trouble and I'm going to, like a star that just got in trouble, not a corporation, and I'm going to go fix it by being sneaky. But that's not, I mean, there are publicists, of course, and maybe we do a little portion of all of this, but that's really not what publicists do, or that's not what PR people do. Of course, there's some publicists, and I think a lot of them are in LA. Frankly, I don't know, but I would think so. They're not really here in Portland. Okay, so the next one is B2B. That's business to business. And I called that company communications. That's boring. So that's just what it sounds like. It's somebody who's working with other businesses to promote their own business. And so that means that they are that the main audience of that business is other businesses. That's how they can sell, is because they're selling to other businesses. And so this role, I kind of think is just a little bit more 9 to 5. Like, that's what I think. We do a lot of B2B PR, and it does seem a little bit more straightforward. And like, we're pretty into work-life flow. And so that's probably why we do a lot of B2B. I mean, that's what it is. Okay, numbers pusher, that's the investor relations. That is kind of, for a public company where you have to connect and communicate with your stockholders. And that's a huge job that can, change based on how the stock prices are doing. And so the audience is the stockholders or other people like that could influence. The influencers in this one are analysts typically. And so since we don't live in New York, we don't do this kind of work, but we do have people who do, who we could recommend you to if you're interested. The do-gooder, that's community relations. Okay, so we live in Portland. That's what we do. We're good at that. So what we do is, of course, we go do community relations. And that's just going about and trying to get different groups to galvanize with different groups, right? But so that could be a sponsorship, that could be an event, it could be volunteering, it could be a big project, could be going into the school and talking about something, and then we PR it. So a lot of times our client will do the community relations side and then we'll PR it, but sometimes they're not going to do the client relations side, the community relations side, because they just don't or they can't. And so then we come in and do that. And then we PR it. So essentially, I like to say that a lot of the great campaigns in PR happen like before you do the PR. And then the PR actually should be easy from there. So the inside agent is the internal relations. That's different than investor relations. So internal, that's speaking with your own staff, and then maybe some really close stakeholders. So partners, agency firms, that kind of thing. And there's a lot you can do with that. I mean, you want to get your staff on the same board, depending on who they are, especially if they're sales agents. Some talking points can be transformed into sales points, all of that. The fire stopper, that's what I call crisis response. And that's what you see, like, that sounds really exciting to me. Like a big crisis. I mean, like a business crisis, not necessarily some movie star. That's what I think of, somebody like flying into DC to fix a problem. But it's not really all like that. Most of the time we work ahead in a crisis, at least I do, because I like to sleep. So we work ahead, but there is a little bit of that crisis response that occurs, even in Portland. And so that one is more like senior level, like super senior level work. The glad hander, that's public affairs. So that's somebody who goes and tries to connect with lobbyists so that they can make moves, make change. So change laws, change policies on behalf of a specific client. And then the mouthpiece, that's the public information officer. And we interviewed one on our podcast. That is Dave Thompson, former PIO of Oregon's Department of Transportation. And he talks about what he does. He does a lot of things besides just being a mouthpiece, but that's kind of an important job to kind of be like rep your company in the press. And then the strategist, ideally everybody's doing a little bit of strategy, especially in PR, but maybe in any job. And so with strategy, I mean, thinking about what you're going to do before you do it, and then possibly reassessing. And so PR has a lot of that, ideally. And ideally, you're working with a big team, and the strategy kind of comes maybe from the leadership, like the more senior people. And then as you get used to working in PR and used to seeing what's done and what's not done, then you can move up to being more strategic. But oftentimes there's just ways to be strategic in everything that you do. That's all I have today.